Michael, the last third or so of your book, which is undoubtedly the part of it that most of the eaters will concentrate on, attempts to answer the question you said everyone bombarded you with when they read The Omnivore's Dilemma. Okay, but what do I actually eat? And your short answer in this book is stop eating the Western diet. That's kind of the thing. And I know this is the whole substance of the book, but briefly, what do you mean by stop eating the Western diet?
You make it sound harder than it is. Well, you know, I spent a lot of time researching this book. I was really trying to get to the bottom of what do we really know about health and food. Okay, how does diet affect our health? And I dug and I dug and I dug and I read lots of really boring nutritional articles. And I found there was a lot of debate and uncertainty about what made us sick. Why did we have all this chronic disease? But there was, and there has been for more than 100 years, unanimity on this point. People who eat this thing called the Western diet, which I'll briefly define as highly processed food, refined grains, lots of free sugars and added fat, lots of meat, red meat in particular, and very little whole grain fruits and vegetables. Okay, the basic fast food American diet. Whoever starts eating that way will very soon get a very predictable series of chronic diseases in a predictable order. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and a specific set of cancers. And this has happened as every population around the world that's eating a traditional diet, whether it's Maasai in Africa, Inuit in Alaska, Mexicans in Central America, when they start eating this way, this happens to them. Mm-hmm. So even though we don't know exactly why, whether it's the saturated fat or the additives or the carbohydrates, we don't really need to know. We just need to stop eating that way. And the challenge, I think, is how to stop eating a Western diet without leaving Western civilization. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not prepared to go back to, I mean, I've done a little bit of hunter-gathering, and it's just way too time-consuming. And there are just too many of us and not enough woods and you know, wild animals and things. So that became the challenge: is how to get how to get off the Western diet without leaving civilization. Mm-hmm. And it's possible, and it's more possible today than it has been in a long time. There is more of the kind of well-grown whole foods around, and simply by, and this advice I stole from you, by eating food as opposed to edible food-like substances that now populate our supermarkets, you'll be all right. Mm-hmm. But it, you know, telling the food from the edible food-like substances gets hard.
As you said in the book, it was, now I just lost what I was going to say. You ended your sentence and I lost my point.
Sorry. I'll take responsibility
it's okay.
for that.
It'll come back. You say something in your book that was really interesting, but I'll get to it later.
And it was unforgettable.
It was unforgettable. Oh, no, I know. I've got it. You said that had you given this advice 15 or 20 years ago, people would have thought you were just nuts because there really was no way to do it. You couldn't eat this way because all we had was the supermarket, and that's where everyone had to get their food. There was no farmers markets, there were no, and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, this book 40 years ago would have been the manifesto of a crackpot. I mean, I would have been one of these back to the land people growing all their own food, like you.
Yeah, right. Well deserved.
And no, because you couldn't, you know, if you wanted well-grown food in healthy soils without pesticides, you had to do it yourself. It just didn't exist in the marketplace, and now it does. And we should count ourselves very lucky that we've gotten to that point.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk later about the fact that it still tends to be a diet for people who have money. It's still hard to do.
There are two basic problems with eating this way, and we've had this conversation, Dan and I also. It costs more money today, and it takes more time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to address that?
No, you don't have to do that. I have another question, actually.
Okay.
I learned one entirely new rule from this book, which I was very excited about. I thought, what a wonderful idea. I never thought of it that way. You said, eat more leaves and less seeds. And that was fine through November. And then I went out into I actually had chard every day, once for breakfast. It's not bad for breakfast. But when I went out last week, now, of course, we've lost winters, so this may not be relevant forever. We may be like Southern California here. But last week, it was frozen in my garden, and there was nothing left of the chard. And I do have mâche, which is a winter annual, and I did have a salad last night picked from the garden. But animals can eat hay or silage. You said we should eat like our animals should eat. And animals, grass-fed animals in the winter can have hay or silage. And I don't know what the equivalent would be, but I don't think I'd want to eat it. And what do you expect me to do? I mean, do you really mean more plants, less seeds? Seeds are kind of plants. Can I eat storage vegetables like potatoes and carrots and sweet potatoes and things, which is what I do eat? Or is that the dreaded carbohydrates, which we won't talk about? But I mean, what should I do?
Well, you know, I mean, people do eat seeds in the winter. I mean, and they're storage organs for plants, and they help us build up fat. And in fact, even cattle will eat seeds of grass in the fall to build up. And you see, you know, squirrels with acorns, and it's a seasonal thing. But we're eating seeds and we don't think of it that way. But when we're eating now high fructose corn syrup, bread, refined grain, that's all seeds. That's all the seeds of plants, the rich, starchy, fattening parts of these plants. So we eat leaves when we can. And there are not a lot of leaves in the winter. And people didn't eat a lot of leaves in the winter.
I mean, you're Californian now, so you don't know that. So
Yeah,
I'm going to turn
right.
to Dan.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I can't help you.
I'll give a plug for Roots. I mean, where we are, you know, it is the best time of year, really, right now, to go to the farmer's market and buy celery root and carrots and beets and parsnips. And I always knew that just maybe instinctively because as a chef, you know, you taste this stuff and it's always sweeter at this time of year, or going from the first couple of freezes through really February and March. I never understood why, and then I was lucky enough to speak to a plant physiologist who happens to be a poet as well, and he explained it poetically, which was, he said, when it gets cold and there's multiple freezes, the plant is trying to survive. Yeah. And so it raises its body temperature by converting starches to sugars. And so he said, what you're tasting is sweetness, but what the plant is saying to you is death, which I thought was very interesting. But it is, ironically, the greatest natural advantage we have in the Northeast, and something that California,
and
Texas,
our carrots
Florida,
never get as good.
No,
as
they
Eastern
never
carrots.
get as good because of the freeze.
Because they don't get cold.
And so at this time of year at the restaurant, we're loaded with root vegetables, and I would suggest that's a good way to load your plate.
And that's okay.
It's food. Yeah, of course it's okay.
No, I mean, but I really took seriously. I thought that was such an interesting idea because
But
I
you-
don't think I eat enough leaves generally, you know?
Oh, I think you do.
No,
you
Joan,
think
you
I-
do.
You eat, you eat more leaves than most people. You don't have to worry about this.
Okay, thanks.